Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to another IPDA webinar. I'm June Rawl. Today's webinar is the new 2019 Florida Department of Education Adult ESOL Curriculum Framework webinar. It's a part one of, there's two parts to this webinar. The first one, of course, is today, and then part two will occur on May 8th. So today, I want to do a shout out to the developers of this curriculum framework, and their names are listed below here. These were developed, this whole webinar and all of the content was developed by Florida's adult ESOL practitioners for Florida adult education programs. So we really want to thank the people that are listed here on the developers. And of course, they were guided by Phil Anderson, who's on the call with us today as well. But before we get started, let's go over some housekeeping rules. You know that your attending mics are muted, and you also know that the presentation will be recorded and it will be available within 48 hours. Today, you're going to be previewing a PowerPoint and a handout. And if you haven't downloaded those yet, they're on the IPDA website. You just go under the content area of ESOL and open the tab of the webinar. Ron will show you that a little bit later as we get to the handbook, but I wanted to point out that those materials are already there for you to print. Today's facilitator is Ronald Cruz, no stranger to any of us. So we really appreciate Ron being here today. He's our main facilitator, and he's going to walk us through this presentation. We also have some guest facilitators on the call. Today is Christina Llerena, and Christina comes to us from Atlantic Technical College and runs the pre-college ESOL and Academic Studies department there. Now, Christina is under the weather today, so she will not really be able to speak too much, but she will be giving me her suggestions or any kind of, answers to your questions as we go along. So I'll be monitoring that. And on that note too, make sure that you put your questions in the Q&A section. Don't use the chat, use the Q&A. We're going to be monitoring that throughout the webinar. Ron, let's go to the next slide. On part two, which will be on May 8th, Christine Briggs will be joining us on that call as a guest facilitator. And then we're going to dive into a little bit more of these frameworks and also discuss a lesson plan template that was designed by this group. So with that, Ron, I'm going to turn it over to you. You can go over the objectives and get started on the webinar.
Thank you very much, June. Good afternoon, everyone. It's nice to see you all again join into our today's webinar, and want to make sure that we cover all our bases today. So I'm going to start off with going over what we're going to cover for today for part one, and then give you some idea of what we'll cover in the next agenda, so that to kind of tease you a little bit on what's to come. So in this particular webinar, we're going to be talking about, the Florida Department of Education Adult ESOL Curriculum Framework. So much of what goes into the development of that, what are the components of it, what are the different pieces that make it really work, and things like that. And all of the other materials that have been developed for us that goes along with this curriculum framework will be discussed in today's webinar. Of course, we're going to do a little bit of an activity before we start and then go over some of the objectives. There are 3 objectives as per design of this workshop or webinar. There are 3 objectives, main objectives that we're going to cover. And for today, we're going to cover objective 1 and part of objective 2. Now, on our May 8th webinar, we're going to cover what's the remaining of objective 2 and then finish it off with objective 3. So if you're asking what those objectives are, so you're going to encounter them as we go along in this webinar. Before we proceed, I just want to make sure that you are all able to download a copy of the handbook that goes on that goes with this webinar. So let me just briefly show you that. If you go into the Florida IPDAY website, you just type in floridaipday.org on your Google Chrome. You go into your event calendar, or you can go into whatever, you can go into ESOL actually, and go into, well, you can go to that one too. But here you'll see today's webinar, and then that's where you register. But really where we want you to go is the ESOL side and go under webinar. And then you're gonna see the topmost webinar there. If you click on that, it will take you to the webinar page. Normally on the right side, you will see an icon that shows a thumbnail of the video that's that has been recorded. But since this is still an ongoing webinar, there's nothing there yet. So where you want to go is on the bottom left corner of the webinar page, where you see presentation, PDF, and handout. What I want you to download is the section that says handout-workbook. If you do, once you do that, you'll know that you have downloaded the correct copy or the correct version if you're looking at this front page or the front cover of that handbook. Now let me give you a moment to kind of just double check that real quick. We're going to go over the contents of this handbook later on today, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys have all the materials we need in order so that we can proceed with this webinar. Okay, so I'm going to go back to presentation view. So we're going to talk about the curriculum frameworks, and we're going to talk about partly all of objective 1, which will cover the 3 parts of the curriculum frameworks, and then the connectivity between the ESOL curriculum framework, the college and career readiness standards, and the English language proficiency standards. Specifically, we're going to make a correlation between all of them in terms of levels. And then last but not the least, we're going to talk about the correspondence chart. And then after that, on our May 8th webinar, we're going to cover the rest of the objectives in this workshop. So let's go ahead and proceed. Let's do a quick activity. So right now, it's good practice for teachers to activate prior knowledge. This is one thing that's research-based. Strategy works well with K-12, but it works really well with adults too. So we do this by kind of tapping on what our students already know, and kind of capitalizing on what they already know to propel them to learn the new material. So with that said, I'm going to talk to you about this activating prior knowledge activity that I incorporated in this webinar called FIST to 5. So in this particular activity, you're going to have to actively participate using your Q&A tab, okay? So what's going to happen is I'm going to display in certain bullet points that list several concepts, okay? So I'm not going to tell you what concepts they are. There will be concepts, anything under the sun. And then what you're going to do is after you see that concept, I want you to use your Q&A tab, pull it up, and you're going to type in a number between 0 to 5 based on how you feel about that concept. So 0, you only key in 0 and submit it on the Q&A tab if it's a concept that you know nothing about, like, oh, what is that? I have never heard of that before. I know nothing about it. Okay, now you select 3 if it's a concept that you understand, but you still need a little bit more help. So I know that, but I'm not an expert on it. I may have to call and ask somebody for help in certain items, but overall I kind of have a general picture. Okay, and you give it a 5, you type in the number 5 or you respond with a number 5. If that's a concept that you really, really know, that you're an expert on, or you can teach it to someone, you can explain it really well to someone if they ask you a question about. So that's really the number 5. Now, I didn't go over 1, 2, and 4. Well, the 1, 2s, and 4 are the in-between. So if you're in between, I know nothing about this material to understand it, then give me a 1 or a 2. But if you're in between somebody that understands the basic of the concept, but not really a full expert on it, then you give me a 4. So hopefully that explanation gives you an idea. So really summing it up, I'm going to display a concept. You're going to use the Q&A tab, and you're going to type in a number between 0 to 5 based on how you feel. 0 being the number that represents a concept that you do not know anything about, and 5 is a concept that is really something that you truly understand and can explain it to someone. All right, I hope you're ready. So we're going to go ahead and display these concepts. So get your mice ready on the Q&A tab, so be ready to click and respond when I display the concept. June will give us a general idea of what numbers we're seeing, just a brief estimate of what are the numbers that are popping up. Okay, so let's start with the first concept, the College and Career Readiness Standards. So go ahead, go to your Q&A tab, click it, open it up, the window will pop up. I need you to type a number between 0 to 5 based on how you feel about this concept, the College and the Career Readiness Standards. So June, tell us what we're seeing so far.
We're seeing a lot of 3s, a couple of, and then hovering over a couple of 4s, but mostly 3, Ron.
So we're straggling between 3 and 4, most, and then heavy on the 3 side. Okay, very good.
Yeah,
that's really what
we do have. We do have a couple that are experts on it as well. So,
of course, we do have those experts that are gonna be in here, because we have Christina and we have Phil Anderson here. We have you, June. So we're gonna have a few, a handful of people that are gonna mark it 5. That's understandable, but I think majority, is it safe to say that majority is a 3?
Yes.
Very good. So that's a really cool measure. So that's really expected, because we're still learning. The mere fact you're in this webinar is you're still learning about a lot more about the College and Career Readiness Standards. So good job. Kudos on you. Our second concept is the English Language Proficiency Standards. So let's give them a little bit of a moment. Go to your Q&A tab, pull it up, type in a number between 0 and 5, between 0 and 5 to depict what you feel, how you feel about this concept, the English Language Proficiency Standards. Let's give it a couple more seconds, and then I'm going to turn it over to June to give us a little bit of an update.
There's lots of 3s coming in on this. It's really heavy on the 3s and somewhat on the 2s.
All right, so yes, because the English Language Proficiency Standard was developed after the College and Career Readiness Standards, it's just expected that we might be slightly less knowledgeable of the English Language Proficiency Standard as we have, as we are with the College and Career Readiness Standards. So that's kind of like expected. Again, we're eliminating the outliers that are giving us 5s, because we got people here that are expert in these fields, but we are giving us a general picture of heavy on the 3s with some 2s. Thank you, June. Our next concept is the Florida Adult ESOL Curriculum Frameworks. So again, you're going to go to your Q&A tab, pick a number from 0 to 5, key it in, press enter, and then June is going to give us an update in a few seconds. All right, how does it look, June?
This looks more on, I would say 3 and 4, Ron.
Okay, so
We're a
now
little
we're
higher on
on
this
the 3
one.
and 4. We're a little bit higher, yes, because we do a lot of I'm sure your own district do a lot of professional development on the curriculum frameworks. This has been released. It's always is readily available through the FLDOE website. It's there's a lot, and you've got a lot of resource teachers in your districts and colleges that are really helping people understand the adult ESOL curriculum framework. So it's just expected that we're on the 3 side, a little bit slightly to the 4. That's very good. That's very, very accurate based on what I predict you guys are going to key in. Our next concept is the life and work competencies. So again, you're going to go into your Q&A tab, click on the Q&A tab, type in a number between 0 and 5. 0 being you know nothing about the life and work competencies, or 1 is like, this sounds a little bit familiar, or even putting in a 5, I'm an expert on this and I can even teach someone what this is. So let's check back with June to see what you guys are keying in.
Ron, the majority is 4 and 5. There's a couple on the 3s also, but the majority is really 4.
Very good, and that's really expected. So we should be more on the high end on this, because the life and work competencies is something that's an ongoing theme that we've been doing. We've been doing the life and work competencies even before the college and career readiness standards came about, and even before the English language proficiency standards were developed. So really, the life and work competencies are the competencies that we continually work with students to help them with everyday activities and their work and preparing them for the workforce. These are the things that, communication skills, places in the community, financial literacy, economics, health, all of these major themes of life and work. We pretty much know about this. A lot of textbooks are written against these life and work competencies and are based upon these life and work competencies because they really lend themselves to real world application. Very good. All right. So, and then we're now going to go into our last concept here, the adult ESOL functioning levels. So again, you're going to go in, use your Q&A tab, guys. Go up to the Q&A tab, click it, type a number between 0 and 5 based on how you feel about this concept, and then press enter. June is going to give us an update on what she's seeing on her end in a few seconds.
This is kind of mixed because we have a couple that are actually 0, but then we have a lot of, we have 5s, 4s, 5 again, Ron. I'm just glancing through. We have a 1.
I see it.
A 1 here, a 2, 5, 4, 4, 4,
okay,
3.
This is very good, and I know we have Phil Anderson on this webinar as well. This is a good, really a good data that we're capturing during this webinar. That we have, there's still a little bit of confusion in terms of the functioning levels. Are we looking at the college and career readiness standards for that? Or are we looking at the ELPS? Or what is, are we adopting the same functioning levels as we have in the past based on these? So all of these things, the reason why you're in this webinar is to clarify all of these things to you. But when we talk about the ESL functioning level, okay, much of it really has something to do with how their scale score on the standardized test, which is CASAS. So part of that is is determined by those standardized scores or the scale scores that were that result upon student taking the pre-test or post-test. Now, how those functioning levels relate to what they can really do and what we can teach or how we can help them really will be explained a little bit further as we go into this webinar. Great job, guys. Thank you so much for the participation. And so I think we've activated your prior knowledge right now. Oh, we've got one more, but we're going to, for purposes of time, we're going to go ahead and skip that last one, because I think we've got a really good feel of already what it is. If you still want to respond to it, go ahead and do that. We'll just review that later on, just for data purposes. But with that said, we're going to continue and move on to our content for today. So let's do a quick debrief on this. So what did you learn? So let's use again our Q&A tab. Type in what prior knowledge did you discover about these items that we just did? Why is it important to do an activating prior knowledge activity? So based on research, again, activating prior knowledge is nothing new. This is something that's been ongoing. It's a best practice. It's research based. But based on what we do in the classroom, we activate prior knowledge to find out what students already know. So kind of gauge the pulse of the class to see where we're going to go. Do we have to review the previous lesson, or can we jump into the new lesson right away? It also adds value to your students' experience, meaning what they do on a regular basis, you're kind of monitoring them, you're looking into it, and you as in terms of perception, the students see that, hey, my teacher cares about what I'm learning. My teacher cares about, do I already have the necessary prerequisite knowledge before I move on? So really adding more to the experience of the students in the classroom. And last but not the least is it validates what students already know. So really, once you say, when we do this, and you get like, okay, when June was saying, okay, we've got a bunch of threes, and you're like, oh yes, I'm a 3 too. Yes, so you get a feeling of like, okay, I'm not super lazy. I'm not living in a virtual world or whatnot. I am experiencing the same experience as the other people in this training. So yes, really cool strategy to do, guys. I suggest you do this every day with your class. Just right before a prior activity, or activating prior knowledge doesn't have to be long. It could be like 4 to 5 minutes long. We just extended this one a little bit more because we are working on a different platform, on a webinar. But if you do this in class, it's going to be much quicker with your students, because your students are just going to be doing a fist, or a 1 or 2 or 3 or a 4 or 5, and by scanning the room from left to right, you get a general picture. Okay, are we ready to move on? Do we have to review other things, or are there some lingering questions that you need to respond to? So great activity, guys. So I hope you like it. Send your comments on the Q&A tab if you have any questions with regards to this activity. All right, so do you know about this acronym? Have you seen this before, the WIIFM? This always pops up. I teach ESOL, I do ABE, GED classes. This is something that my students always think about. They ask me this question. Does anybody know what the WIIFM is? Just type it in your Q&A tab. We're gonna see this. See, June, watch out if anybody can catch it with the good. Who can hit it on the target? What the WIIFM is?
What's in it for me?
Yes, very good. We need to send a prize to that person, June. Okay, so what's in it for me? So what? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's the most important question in learning. So like, okay, I've learned this material, so what? What am I going to use it for? Is it on the test? Is this really helping me in the real world? So really, a lot of our students are really looking at the value of what they're learning, not just the value of it on standardized testing, but the internal value of content and skills to their own life, to their own experience. So really, the value of, this really emphasizes the value in the class. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and start going over the 2019 Adult ESOL Curriculum Framework. Okay, so which is kind of like our goal for today. Again, we're covering only objective 1, but there are 3 objectives for this particular webinar. So for purposes of like giving you the big picture, objective 1, which we're going to cover today, we're going to look at the 3 components of the ESOL framework, which are the CCRS, the LPS, and the life and work competencies. Now, on the next webinar on May 8th, we're going to talk about integrating these 3 components into a lesson plan. Wow, this is really going to really help you kind of in an easy, straightforward fashion, kind of draft your lesson or, put together your lesson that aligns to the curriculum framework. And then last but not the least is we're going to have an opportunity to create our own lesson plans. It's going to be really fun. It's going to be really creative. We're going to have lots of back and forth. I've had conversations with Christine Briggs, and we're very, very excited. We got a lot of cool stuff planned for you in this next webinar. So please, if you're thinking about not doing the second webinar, please think again, because now that you've seen all the objectives we're covering, you might want to reconsider. All right, so we're going to start off with objective 1, which is talking and diving into the curriculum frameworks, okay? So we have now the curriculum frameworks, the 3 components of the curriculum frameworks, which is the English, which is the College and Career Readiness Standards, okay? We've got the ESOL Literacy. Oh, the 3 curriculum frameworks that I meant. This is not the 3 parts, I'm sorry. These are the different curriculum frameworks out there, okay, for ESOL. So first of all, we've got the ESOL curriculum frameworks, the adult ESOL one, the college and career readiness, which is a separate group of ESOL. This is what we call the academics group. In the past, we call them the academics group. They have their own curriculum framework. And then if they're below a level 1 ESOL, then we consider them as a literacy student. So we've got a group of, we got a framework for that too. And then we also have another one available that is it's posted on the website for those that offer the ELCATE, or the English Literacy for Career and Technical Education. All of the frameworks are in draft until July 1st, 2019. Okay, so if you want to visit that, just go straight, download your own pre-copy of the newest version of either one of these curriculum frameworks. Just go straight to the DOE website, which is www.fldoe.org. June, I'm going to stop right here, see if we have any questions.
No questions.
Okay, thank you, June. All right, so let's take a look at your participant handbook. So I don't know how you're going to do this, but if you minimize your screen, your webinar screen, you can still hear me in the background, so you can pull up your handout and just kind of I'll walk you through what's in the handbook. So I really don't want you to look at this at the webinar screen or the video screen. I want you to take a look at your own handout and just simply listen to my voice like a spirit. Listen to my voice in the background going over the different parts of the handbook with you, so that when you start working on the handbook or using the handbook to do your own training with your own people, or going and reviewing what you've already learned or referring back to it, you know what's in it and how to use the handbook. So people took a lot of time putting together the handbook. So let's take a look at that. And
Ron, while you're pulling that up, a question just came up about the levels. So is the ESOL College and Career Readiness Framework for level 7? Is there a CCR framework for level 7 beyond levels 1 through 6?
Yes, there is. So really what we're doing here, and again, Phil will answer this also through the Q&A tab. Yes, what we're talking about as the level 7 is really this ESOL College and Career Readiness. So this is the second bullet. So there's a separate curriculum framework for that level of student. That is what we used to call level 7. It is the level 7 I meant, and it was the one we used to call academics level. Yes, good question, June.
And then Ron, can you pull up the handbook? Oh, good. There you go. Thank you, Ron.
So I'm pulling up the handbook right now. Okay, I have it. So I'm gonna put it in I'm gonna try to enlarge and decrease size, but as we go. But I'm just gonna go over this. So you've got your cover page, and then followed by the table of contents. The table of contents shows you where to find general material in this, and actually divides it also into the different parts. So it's got the preface. It's also got the gradual release model. We're going to talk about the gradual release model a little bit today. There's a chart of correspondences. So just gonna do that. Let me scroll through it. So you've got the preface. You've got the so I'm scrolling through the preface area. And then you've got the gradual release model. Just to give us an idea, really, what we do is follow the gradual release responsibility model for successful research-based strategies out there for language learning. Then you've got your correspondence charts. If you don't know what this chart is, please calm down, relax. We're going to talk about this, break this down to you, how to understand this correspondence chart. And then you got your college and career readiness standards following that. Okay. So hopefully you're following along. As you can see, as you kind of skim through it, the college and career readiness standards breaks it down between reading foundations, reading standards, writing standards, speaking and listening standard. There's about 8 to 10 standards in each one. And then you've got your language anchor standards, okay? So you've got those. And then as you continue scrolling, okay, you're gonna see the ELP standards. Okay, and then continue scrolling. And then you're gonna see just the summary of all the 10 English language proficiency standards. Another more visual representation, but this one kind of breaks down the ELP standards between which one are receptive skills, so it categorizes them by skills. So are they receptive skills, productive, interactive, and linguistic? We're going to talk about those differentiations later on, but this is just to give you a brief idea of what this is. The next would be your life and work competencies, and they're listed by subject areas, starting with communication. And then you move on to employment. And then each one has a subsection. So just, I'm just scrolling here so that you know what we're looking at here. You go into section 5, which is health and civics, and you go in and continue on. You get into, environment, mathematics, and then learning and thinking. So we've got some new ones here. So we've got these mathematics, life and work competencies here, and we also have the learning and thinking. So these are fairly new ones. We're going to talk about those. We've got a sample lesson plan template here for you, already pre-made. We're going to use these. Keep in mind on the day 2 of this webinar on May 8th. So these are the things that is already in there. And then we've got a blank template here for you. And actually, you're probably going to need 2 blank templates. One that's completely blank and the other one is partially filled here. You're probably going to need, this is the last part. I would print a lot of these prior to the next training, so I'll have them readily available because we'll be doing lots of fun stuff with this template. Got prepared some really cool activities out there for you. So that's it. That is your participant handbook for you. We will be referring to the handbook throughout this training. June, do you want to say something?
Yes, we do have a question that's come in. How different is this from CASA's standards?
We're talking about the life and work competencies. Is that correct?
It's not stated in the question, but I would think so. Okay. Or maybe all of them.
That's what I was thinking is if I'm thinking what that person was thinking, is then maybe they're not verbatim, they're not exactly the same. Okay, I would look at it, and I'm going to be really, really careful answering this question. I would look at it that there are kind of like very similar to each other. They're not exactly the same. They're not exactly worded. There's a lot more in these CASA's competencies than what it is included. And really what's on the, let me pull that back up. What's really on the life and work competencies are general summaries of what's really going to be on, CASA's life and work breaks it down even more for this. And I don't think the life and work really breaks it down by topic or subjects. But it's going to be a combination of this. And I'll have Phil Anderson.
And he has chimed in, so I'm going to read you his response.
Yes, please.
All CASA's competencies are included, and there are more that are not found in the list of CASA's competencies. By all competencies, I mean that all of the CASA's competencies that are on the test are included.
Very good. All right, so there you go. So they are all included and kind of factored into this life and work. And there is more stuff that is covered here in the life and work than what it is on the CASA's competencies. And then if you go into the CASA's competencies as well, they get really, really specific on the competency as well. Whereas it's, mostly very general on the life and work. So we're going to take a look at that and compare that side by side. That could be even a topic we can discuss in the CASA's network conference call, Phil. So just to clarify that concept to everybody else. Thank you, Phil. So we're going to move on. So again, this is just the general kind of summary of what you can find in the handbook. So you've got the preface, you've got the college and career readiness standards, the ELPS is also included there, and then towards the end you'll see the life and work competencies, and then a lesson plan template, one that's partially done, one that's completely done, and one that is a completely blank template. So you've got 3 different templates you're working with. All right.
Ron,
yes.
it looks like we might need some more clarification. So there's a question that's coming in saying this: the life and work competencies are all of the ones covered on the CASA's test. Would that be CASA's life and work listening test, listening goals, life and work reading goals?
Oh my goodness. So we're going to turn that into Phil a little bit. So while Phil is typing his response to that question, these are all different things. So they're not all the same. There are specific competencies. There are CASA's reading competencies. It's a separate list than the reading goals. The reading goals is something else. So I'm going to have, do we have a response from Phil so far, even if partial one, June?
He's typing now, so we'll get, when that comes in. Oh, all CASA's tests drawn from the L and W competencies. The list.
Life and work competencies. So all of the CASA's questions were derived from the life and work competencies. There you go.
Yeah, and I would say any other questions like that, let's just have them send an email directly to Phil on that, since he's the expert on that area of the alignment, right?
Yes, because I'm a 3 on that, so I can give you an idea of what it is, but I don't have, Phil has the better words and the exact words to kind of describe the differences between them and the relationship between those. So maybe we can come up with some type of document that kind of clarifies that. But this is really good questions, June. So keep them coming. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and move on, and let's talk about. So we've talked about what is already on the handbook. Now we're going to talk about the different things that is there on the curriculum framework. So what is that? What is the curriculum framework for? You know, it's not really a curriculum, but it has the essentials to really put together a good curriculum for, you know, for instruction. As it is, it can be, and we really highly suggest that you use this for planning and instruction. So really finding out, like, what do I have to teach my students? What is really expected of me as a teacher? You know, if you want to know about how do you want your students to perform better on the test, you can then go over the curriculum frameworks, because the curriculum framework directly aligns to that standardized assessment, and even provides even more. You know, the curriculum framework, I would say, goes way beyond the standardized test as well. Again, another purpose, another use of the curriculum framework, it assists us on, you know, how to improve these things, you know, reading, writing, all of the modalities for communication, the life and work competencies included, the math skills there. And you can also notice, if you read through that, it also already incorporates some citizenship responsibilities into them as well. And these curriculum frameworks are aligned to the National Reporting System. A lot of people know this as NRS. It aligns to the NRS descriptors and the corresponding educational functioning levels as dictated by NRS. So really, like, the curriculum framework is kind of like my one-stop shop. If I need anything, it's right there. Everything I need. I just have to do a little bit more reading. Okay, so that's what we're going to do this for you, is make this going over the curriculum frameworks a little bit more enjoyable and interactive. And you've got somebody, you know, talking through me, June, Phil, every now and then, and in Christina through your Q&A, going over the curriculum frameworks and clarifying these things to you.
And Ron, it's a very interesting webinar because there's a lot of comments that are coming through. So if you don't mind, I'm going to go ahead and read them off to you. First off, keep in mind that the ESOL curriculum framework was written before the goals test was out. So, and that they are aligned to the college and career readiness standards. So the department will check when programs do transition to the goals test to make sure that these competencies are included. But it being aligned to the college and career readiness standards, I kind of think it is. But they will double check that. Now, here's another question. Would it be possible to clarify the function of each of the 3 components of the ESOL curriculum framework?
Okay, and that's what we're going to do next, June. That is really objective 1.
Okay, that's great. And then I'll read you the second part of that question. The college and career readiness standards, which are the end goal of the adult ESOL student as they work towards achieving their long-term personal and career goals. That's excellent. The English language proficiency standards, which provides guidance to the instructor in the types of linguistic support students may need. The life and work competencies, which provide the context for building the lessons that were delivered through the ELP standards for each ESOL level. Isn't that excellent?
That's excellent. Who said that? Is that Phil?
No, but
somebody. Wow, we need to send that
number 5
a great recognition. That's probably one of the few people that marked 5 on the activating prior knowledge.
Actually, I don't think she'll mind me saying it's Mirtha from Martinez from Seminole State College. So, you know, great person to reach out to if you need some clarity.
Hi, Mirtha. Thank you for tuning in. All right, we're going to go ahead and jump right straight to objective 1 and finish off today's webinar and continue off on our next May 8th webinar. So let's go over, I think that's what it is. So let's give it a little bit of an update there. The college and career readiness standards came before the English language proficiency standards. You know, it's kind of like the result of this WIIFM, you know, trying to funnel students, making sure that they are, so we are supporting them and getting them ready for the workforce and providing them with the essential skills that they're going to need to compete in the today's workforce or labor market. And then we're finding out that the college and career readiness standards are written at such a high level of language as well. So then they develop the English language proficiency. Sorry. And then they develop, in 2016, the English language proficiency standards, because we are not all content teachers, and college and career readiness standards are written based on content, reading, and mathematics. And whereas us, we focus solely on language, and we focus and operate at slightly a lower level, than what college and career readiness standards are written for. So then we have the English language proficiency standards. This provides instructors with guidance on how to really break down the college and career readiness standards, figure out the different, kind of like supporting standards to the college and career readiness standards, to really focus and hone in on the linguistic skills, the linguistic structures, and the language anchors that are included in the college and career readiness standards. Okay, and then we go into the last but not the least component, which is the life and work competencies. This really, what they provide in the life and work, is provide you with the context of where you want to teach. So let's just give you an example. Let's say we're trying to say, let's think something basic, something grammar. Okay, so let's say identify plural versus singular nouns or something like that. Well, you want to apply that into just knowing what's a singular noun and plural noun doesn't really make so much significance to me, other than just learning a little bit about the language. But if we apply it on a context, let's say, okay, well, let's talk about singular and plural in terms of places in the community, or singular and plural in terms of let's say health, weather, mathematics, things like that, then students are able to apply those linguistic skills into a context of daily life, or even context at work, where they can do or they can apply what they know. So hopefully that really clarifies the three components of the ESOL framework. One of the things that they highlight really, heavily on the ESOL framework is these three key advances. So there were three key advances with the push, or with the development of the college and career readiness standards. Much more emphasis is given to complex text, meaning students must be able to interact with complex text that pertain to any particular subject area. It could be something in science or photosynthesis, or something that has to do, it could be a manual, it could be a set of instructions on how to set up your own setup box or whatever. It must be a text that is complex, and it uses lots of academic language. Really, one place that I look for is really, do they have all of these mostly composed of the academic word list? Let's look at that and see. Let's find text that has a lot of those academic words in it. Another thing that is emphasized is the evidence from text. So not just when students are interacting with text, they really have a specific purpose. And if you're tuning into a lot of my webinars and face-to-face trainings, I emphasize this a lot, is teasing out that evidence from text. So citing evidence across domains. Maybe it could be reading, speaking of something you've heard, or she said this, he said this, or something that you read on paragraph 11 on page 1 of the article. We saw this particular type of evidence to support my claim, let's say, for whatever claim that they're trying to do. So this is something that they're going to continually work on, a skill that is a very complex skill that is highly assessed on a TABE 11 and 12 or any adult basic education test. I know for a fact that this is heavily tested on the GED test, trying to figure out or trying to justify your claim by pointing out the evidence from the text. So really, we're trying to shift our view to kind of focus a little bit more on allowing and helping the students to see the evidence from the text. And last but not the least is focus on building the knowledge. So building the knowledge, just reading for learning, or speaking for learning, or listening for learning, is really focusing on capitalizing how much more knowledge can I gain through comprehension and through reading rich informational text. Continuing on, the College and Career Readiness Standards focuses on academic skills. These are academic standards, knowledge being needed for college and career readiness success. What they did was they, collaborated with various workforce, various businesses, and they identify what are the key skills in terms of critical thinking, mathematics, reading, language arts, communication that are really, really essential and key in order for you to be successful in the workplace. Or it could be the key skills and things that we're looking for when somebody's applying for a job interview. They're also focusing on oral and written communication skills, the use of academic vocabulary, so there's that special place for academic vocabulary, and also a lot of informational text being exposed to the students. The English Language Proficiency Standards also, on this, and again, this has been reiterated already by Mirtha, and again, piggybacking with what Phil has entered and responded to the questions, they provide the linguistic supports about the knowledge, using the skills using language for students to access the college and career readiness standards. So this is kind of like, I look at them as entry points to access those high-level college and career readiness standards. They also underscore connection between the language and the standards-based academic content, and it also provides the academic language development and learning in content-related areas. So, when you look at the mathematics, mathematics have mathematical practices in them under the college and career readiness standards. How do we access those mathematical practices if we're only just teaching our students with ESL? Is there an entry point there? Well, that's what you're going to get from the English Language Proficiency Standards, is how to approach integrating some of these, and so that you can access those higher level college and career readiness standards. There are 4 different categories of the English Language Proficiency Standard. There are 10 of them, to begin with. They're not a lot. They can be used multiple times. They can be used in collaboration with others, meaning you can do ELP 1, 3, and 5, or you can just simply focus on it. Maybe today I'm just going to do ELP 3, speak and write about level-appropriate complex literary and informational texts and topics. But one thing the teacher has to know is what type of skill is being reinforced by that particular ELP. So what you see in this visual right now, the green arrow pointing to the right, these are what we call receptive skills. So ELP 1 and 8 are receptive skill, meaning we're receiving information. So how do we do that? Well, we do that by reading or listening. So these are the things that we receive information through that type of interaction. Productive skills is something that these are the blue arrows pointing to the left. These are the things that we do, in class that reinforce things that come up with something. There is a product. It could be speech, something that you're speaking to, because what you say is already a product of what you think, or you can write something. This could be as something that is written. So written products and spoken language are all examples of productive skills. So ELP 3, 4, and 7 emphasize that type of thing. And then last but not the least, we got, we got interactive skills. So interactive skills focus on the combination of both receptive and productive skills, such as if there is a dialogue, or, so there's going to be a combination of speaking and then listening and or asking question or responding to that question. So, and then last but not the least are the linguistic structure. This focus more on the language, the grammar structures, those structures that make the English language tick, make us more consistent when we speak and when we write. Those are going to be, those are going to be encapsulated between ELPs 9 and 10. Okay. The last but not the least is the life of work competencies focus on more functional skills, able to do what things that are able to do. How they apply the college and career readiness standard and the ELP standards. They are very relevant to everyday life and even to work. And then, and it could be done at any level of ESOL. And then they're summarized into 9 major subject areas: communication, employment, community, consumer ed, health, civics, environment, mathematics, learning, and thinking. So then, just like I said, there are some new ones, but most of them really are something that we already know, such as consumer education. We've done this many, many times, in our ESL. And it is the context where we apply a lot of the grammatical skills, the speaking, the listening, the reading, the writing, or all of the ELP standards onto, or the CCRS. Now, this is something that I want you to know, and it's just doing a quick look on how the levels of college and career readiness standard align with the ELP standards, and how does that align with what we call our ESOL functioning levels. Okay, so as you can see here, ESOL has 6 levels. So you see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 there. College and career readiness standard, they don't go by number, they go by letters. So you've got A, B, C, D, and E, with A being the lowest level and E as your highest level. And then ELP standard goes back to the numeric ordering of ELP standard level 1, level 2, 3, and 4. So how do these all fit together and connect? So, as you know, you're already familiar with one of these things, which is the ESOL levels, which is your levels 1, 2, and 3. It's your levels 1, 2, 3 through 6. Now, college and career readiness standard summarizes levels 1 to 3 into level A of the CCR standard. So if you're reading or looking into the CCR standard level A, that's mostly going to encapsulate all of your standards between levels 1 and 3 of ESOL. Now you go into level B, that corresponds to your level 4. Level C CCR standard corresponds to level 5 ESOL, and level D corresponds to 6. Now, the good thing is there's a mirror correspondence on the ELP standards. So your levels 1, 2, and 3 ESOL corresponds to the ELP standards level 1 only. So it kind of blocks all those 3 levels together into one level when you go into ELP. And then you go into level 4 aligns with ELP standard 2, ESOL level 5 aligns with ELP standard 3, and then ESOL level 6 aligns with ELP standard 4. Okay. And last but not the least is the correspondence chart. So the correspondence chart tells you the connection between your CCR standard and your ELP standard, or vice versa. So it can be used either way. So on the left side of your correspondence chart, you will see your CCR standard, and on the top side is your ELP standards. So as you see right now, it does not cover all of the CCR standards. Right now, what you're looking at, you're only looking at the reading standards, okay? There's 3 more. You've got the reading foundations, the language, the speaking, listening, and all of that. So, and we're only taking a section of it, but, I just wanted to get a general picture on how to understand the chart of correspondences. So when you're looking at this, it means that when you're teaching, let's say, to the college and career readiness standards, reading standards level, reading standard 1, that means that if you look across the chart, I see two numbers that is listed under this, and I see a number 1 under R1 and a number 9 under the same R1. That means that these two ELP standards can be used to support and access the standards that's being, that is being emphasized on reading standard 1. The same is true with reading standard 2, reading standard 3. Now, when you go into reading standard 4, let's look at that. Reading standard 4 goes into, you see two numbers there. I see a number 8 and number 9. So that means in order to access the academic content standard of reading 4, I can use ELP standards 8 and 9 to really support that or to access that content, and so on and so forth. There's another example here. If you're teaching 2 or you wanted to teach 2 reading standard 8, then it would really and greatly benefit you if you access that content using ELP standard 6. So you're kind of using those standards in line with each other to kind of formulate how you're going to approach the content. Last but not least, just want to let you know that there are several components, resources out there from the IPDE website. We're going to talk about this a little bit more on our next webinar, but I'm sure you already know about the College and Career Readiness Standards modules. If you want to learn more about the CCRS for English Language Arts, that really breaks down and gives you a kind of like an overview of what the what we're really trying to access using the ELP standards and the life and work competencies. It's already there on the IPDE website. Access them through your IPDE portal. And we've got other things in there under the ESOL toolkit, so please explore that when you have time. And June, do we have any questions before we do the last evaluation?
Ron, there's a couple of questions, but I'm going to answer them directly to the people who sent them. So I think we're going to close out now and pull up the feedback slide, because we really want to get your feedback on how you enjoyed this webinar today. So if you would just take a minute of your time and answer these 3 short questions, we really would appreciate that. And keep your questions coming. We'll answer any of them that haven't been answered on this via email. And we hope you can join us again on May 8th for part 2. And I just wanted to again thank the Department of Education and Phil Anderson and the developers who put together this great presentation. And Ron, thank you so much for your facilitation of this.
Thank you, June. Thank you, everyone.
Okay, that ends our feedback slide, and we'll look forward to seeing you then.